In today's tutorial, we will be going over how to create a basic RPG setup with stats, leveling up, and how to save and load those stats between your levels and loading the game. Within the genre of RPGs, there are a lot of different subgenres, but a majority of them can start with this same template. As always, I've placed chapters in this video, including some labeled as explanation. If you are new to Unreal Engine or aren't sure of the how and whys, I encourage you to watch those chapters. Otherwise, you can skip those chapters using Control and the right arrow key. Now, let's get started. Okay, so to get started here, we're in the third person template here. I'm gonna go ahead and make a new folder here. It's gonna be our data folder. And in this folder, I'm gonna make another one. We'll call this one save. Another one, we're going to call this one Structs. And here, we're going to make another folder called player. And right here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a few structs. This under blueprint structure. We'll just call this one attributes. I'll go and duplicate that one 3 times here. Second one's going to be called skills. Third one's going to be called stats. And the fourth one here is going to be called EXP. So let's go into the attributes one to start here. I'm going to use a float. We're going to go with strength. So we're just going with the usual RPG attributes. Intelligence. Let's throw in endurance there. And let's throw in dexterity. We'll leave it at those 4 for now. Alright, we'll go into EXP here next. We're going to do EXP. EXP to level. And just level. You could also throw in a max level in there as well. Go into the skills one next. Let's do swords. Ranged, and let's just do one more. Let's just do armor. Right, stats here. Gonna do float again, and we're gonna do health, max health, MP, and let's do max MP. Represent our magic power. There we go. Save all those, and we're going to go into the player one here. And we're going to make one more structure. There it is. And we'll call this one player stats. Inside this one, we are going to put in our attributes. So we are nesting these structures together. Another one. This one's going to be our skills. There. Another. Throw in our stats now. And the last one here, EXP. Make that EXP. We're also going to go into our default values here. Let's go and assign a few here. Let's make strength. Let's make all our attributes 5. And let's make our skills, let's make those 10. Health, 100 max health, 100, 50 MP, 50 max MP. EXP we'll leave blank, EXP to level, let's make that 30 and level 1. Okay, so a quick explanation of everything we just did there. So the way we are going to handle our RPG system here, and as far as tracking RPG stats, is we're going to be using structures. Now, if you don't know what a structure is a type of class that just kind of holds variables, right? Technically, it can kind of be its own variable, but within that variable, you typically will hold just other variables. So in this case, we're only using float values, but these values can be any kind of value you want. It can even be an object reference, anything you want. But we're only going to be using floats here to keep track of our attributes, our skills, the stats for our character as well as our EXP. Now the reason I have our attributes, EXP, skills, and stats is separated out into separate structures here, and then put into one structure for our player stats, is that gives more flexibility as to what we use these for. So say we have an enemy here. All right, let's just make an enemy structure just to demonstrate. Our enemy, we may only want our enemy to have the attributes and stats. But the beauty of doing these structures separately and then nesting them for our enemy is we can just include what we need. So if we only want our character, our enemy here, to worry about attributes and stats, we can only throw those in. That's all we have to do. We could also create another structure to hold damage values for how much damage that enemy can do. And then we can throw that in here too. And so that allows us to have access to only the things we need. It's also great for a party system. So say you have a party of characters and each of those characters can level up independently. Great. You can throw in all of these into a party member structure here and give each of your party members access to that structure. And then for your enemies, say they have everything but your EXP. Awesome. You can do that too. So doing this system just gives a lot more flexibility, and it also makes saving this data so much easier. But we're going to get to that just a little bit here. Let's go and delete that enemy one we used as an example. And real quick here, we're going to show a little bit later why these default values are important. But I highly suggest you set these default values within the actual player structure itself. And you would want these to basically be what your values for this character will be if you start a brand new game. So set these values within your actual player structure. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to our data folder. We're going to go into the save here. We're going to go blueprint class. We're going to create a game instance. And we'll just call this RPG game instance. And all we have to do is add a variable here that we're going to call player stats. And we're going to make it of, guessed it, player stats. That is all we need to do for that. Game instance here. I did not mention this earlier, but we also need to throw in our player location in there as well. So again, that's going to be of type transform. Just make sure you add that in here. I'm just going to make one more class here. Again, blueprint class. Gonna have to search for it again. We're going to make a save game. This one we're going to be called RPG save. This one we're going to need a few more variables, but first off, again, we're going to have our player stats. Next one we're going to need is current level. And this is referring to the actual world, not the character's level, but the world. We're going to make that a string. And the next one here, we're going to do player location. This one is going to be a transform value. Compile and save that. So what did we just do? Well, we made a game instance and a save file. So quick explanation of these. Our game instance here, if you don't know what a game instance is, there's a few different uses for them. I'll strictly go over kind of how we're going to be using it in this. We're essentially using our game instance as a temporary save file. So our game instance is going to hold our players' stats between worlds, between levels that they go to. So essentially, anytime we are going to change to a different location, so we're going to move our player to the inside of a house, for instance, we don't want to suddenly reset their stats, their level, their experience gains, all that back to the default. We don't want to set them back to level 1. So anytime we do that, we're going to assign their current value into our game instance And then we're just going to load from our game instance that value again whenever we change into that new world. That way it kind of gives us persistent stats. So kind of think of it as like a soft temporary save file, because a game instance is created brand new whenever the game first opens, and then it's destroyed and deleted when the game is closed. That's why it's called the game instance. It is that instance of the game itself. But this isn't going to permanently save our player stats. So if we close out a game where you open it, we're going to be back to level 1. So for that, we need an actual save. So the save game here, we have our player stats to keep track of our EXP, our level, attributes, skills, all of that. And that's also the beauty of using a structure, is rather than having like 20 different variables to keep track of all that, we only have this one, and it's just our player stats structure. So it makes it much cleaner and much easier to save and load that information in. But then we also need to keep track of whatever our level is in. Is our character saving the game inside of a house, or are they saving the game inside the main hub world? Where are they saving it? So we're going to save that as a string. We also need to save the location where our players save the game, because we don't want them to just start back at the default location of that world, unless that's what you're going for, in which case you don't need to save this. So that is what we're doing with that. Now, one more thing we need to do here with this game instance. We need to go to our project settings, and we need to actually assign it to be used. If we go under maps and modes here at the very bottom there, see it's actually already being used there, but we'll make sure that it is assigned. By default, it should be game instance. But let's go and make sure that is RPG game instance there. We can go and close out of that. It's saved, just make sure it's saved. All right, now we will need to make one more item in here, but before we do that, we're going to need to go into our player character here, and we're just going to add our player stats. This is also the beauty of structures. Boom, just like that, hit compile. We have all our variables here added in, and we can access these and change these as we want. Now I am going to make this instance editable. I don't suggest this. I'm only doing this just so later on we can kind of see what that looks like. But do it as you need. For me, I'm just doing it so we can visually see and make sure that our leveling system is working. So we're not going to be making a whole UI system here. I'll actually leave the player open there because we are going to need to go back to it. So let's go back to our data folder here. Back to the save folder, and let's make a new blueprint class of a game mode. And we'll call this RPG game mode. All right, and we're going to go straight into the event graph here. And on event begin play here, what we're going to do is we're going to get game instance, cast that to RPG game instance, get player character, cast that to our player character. Using the third person template, it's just going to be BP underscore third person character. For me, it's player BP because I'm using a C++ template, and this is just my blueprint version of the third person character, but it is the exact same. All right, and then from our player here, we're going to drag off and do set player stats. From our RPG game instance, we're going to get player stats and throw that in there. And after we set our player stats here, we want to do a branch node here, throw that in. And what we're going to do is we're going to check from our game instance here. We're going to do get player location. Split that struct there. I'm going to compare that this does not equal, is not equal to 0, 0, 0. If that's true, then we're going to set our player, set actor location. Let's do set actor transform actually. If that's true, we're going to set our actor transform to once again, get player location. That, and we want to check teleport. We're going to drag off of our game instance here. We're going to do set player location. And we're going to set our player location to just be 0. So we can actually leave this as is. We're going to clear our player location so that it's only doing this when you first load the game and it's not doing this every single time. So we're getting our game instance and we're setting our players' stats to match from our game instance. So basically using our soft save here, which we load this value in whenever we load the game, and we assign it to our game instance. And anytime we change levels, like we're going inside of a building or anything, you would want to assign your player's stats to that game instance again. That way, whenever you're starting up a new world, since your game mode starts at the beginning of that world, it's going to update your player's stats to match to make sure you have consistent level at EXP, all of that across all your worlds. Then we're just going to basically be checking that a player location has been set. And this player location is only going to be set from when we load the game. So if this player location has been set to anything other than 000, then that means we have loaded the game. And this is from a game being loaded. So then we are going to set our player's location to be from the location from our loaded game. Then we want to zero out our player location. That's because this game mode is called every time a world opens up, and we don't always want to teleport our player every single time they go into a new world. We only want to do it the first time when they load the game. So that's why we're going to zero out our player location after we set the actor's transform. Now, we're going to actually start building up our UI for saving the game and loading the game. But before we do that, we need to set up a way to open up a pause menu. So we're going to go into third person, input, actions, and we're going to make an input action here. We'll call it IA_pause. Don't need to do anything to it. Back out, go into our input mapping, add a mapping for our pause here. We'll assign it to P, just for testing purposes here. All right, I'm not going to give too much of a quick explanation on this one. I've gone over that in a few other videos. I'll make a little pop-up here so you can click those if you want, especially the interface one, which is where you'll see all these folders here. Highly recommend it. Very helpful video. But essentially an input action is just going to be what is in our player here. Each of these actions right here, that is an input action. And a player only has access to the input actions that are being used by the mapping context that that player is assigned. So in this case, at an event begin play, it is added the default mapping context to our player. And that default mapping context, this is where you set up what keys actually trigger those inputs. No key is assigned to an input action until it's in a mapping. That is where you can assign button presses, keys. You can also assign triggers and modifiers, but that is a whole other topic. We're going to leave that there. All right, so next up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into our UI folder here. And we're going to make 2 widgets here. First one, we'll just call WBP main menu. And we're just going to actually duplicate this and call it WBP pause menu. We'll start with our main menu here because that'll be the little easiest. Throw in a canvas panel and a vertical box. We're going to anchor our vertical box to the middle, zero out these position values. We're going to set our X alignment to 0.5 and our Y alignment to 0.5 and hit size content. And that's just going to make sure that it's actually in the center. If you leave those as 0, most widgets are aligned by the top left corner of the object, not the middle. So you have to do 0.5. This is basically a percentage scale. So this is 50% into the center, into the horizontal, 50% into the vertical. So this is going to make it actually centered. So a few more things here. We're going to make a button spell. Throw that into our vertical box and throw a text into our button here. Going to assign our button's padding to 20. We'll call this one new game. Make our text match here. New game. Let's actually make that font size 30 here. I'm going to click on our button here and hit Control D 2 times to duplicate that button, as well as all the settings we applied. Make this top button here be load. Make the text match. Load. And this bottom button will make it say quit. And once again, we're going to make our text match. Alright, so we're going to go into our graph now. And we're going to assign what these buttons do. We'll start with the new game button. It's going to be quick and easy. Drag off. We're going to just open level by object reference, and we'll open whatever level you want to start your game in. In this case, that one right there. We're also going to need to get player controller and set show mouse cursor to false, as well as set input mode to game only. Let's just make sure that our input is set up correctly. Hold down Shift W, you can align those to the top there. That's new game. Go and do our quit, that's another quick and easy one. Now we're going to do quit game. Super easy. Now our load game is where things will get a little bit more complicated here. First thing we're going to do is a does save game exist. Slot name, let's make it RPG. Throw in a branch node of B and left click. So if our save game does exist, we are going to load game from slot name RPG. We're going to cast this to RPG save. Then we're going to get game instance, cast to RPG game instance, set player stats, drag off our RPG save, get the player stats, assign that right there. Open level by name. Get current level. Drag that into there. But before we do our open level, we actually want to set player location. Not player stats again. We want to do set player location. To be get player come on. Get player location. 1 and 1, right? Okay, and then we also want to make sure our input is set up correctly as well. So we're gonna throw this in before that. Do it like that. Try to tie this up just a little bit here. It's a little better. Still a bit of a mess here. But it's a little better. There we go. That right there is our load game. Okay, and so a quick explanation of our main menu here. New game, we're just opening up our level that we want our player to start in. Pretty simple. And we're making sure that our player's input is set to game only. And we're hiding our mouse cursor since we don't want that showing up for our third person template. Quit game, very simple. We're just quitting the game. And here's what gets a little bit more complicated, load game. So when you're loading a game, you first want to check, does that save game even exist? So this node here is just going to check, hey, does this save in this slot name here at this user index, does this save exist? If it does, then we'll load it. The reason we're doing this is because if we try to load this save, this slot here, without checking that it does exist first, we'll get a null reference. This also gives us the option to present an error message to the player. So if this save should exist, or say it's set up how it is now, we could use this false here to tell the player that there is no save game to load. This is also how you can check and kind of gray out an option on your main menu. So if you have like a continue option or even a load game option, but it's the first time the player has played and there is no save game, you can use this node here, as well as searching possible save names. You can use this node to check that there is no save game in existence. And then, you know, gray out the option or even hide the option entirely so that you only have new game as your option. That's one possibility. You could also use a node like this to kind of set up, sort of like how the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. First time you play that game and you have no save data, the main menu and how it starts the game is very different than if you do have save data. So this kind of node can also be used to set up something similar. So once we have confirmed that we do have a save game under this slot name, we want to load that. So your slot name here is just the name of your save. Basically, just think of it as the name of your actual save game itself. And at some point, yeah, I would really like to create a tutorial that goes over making and saving games using both thumbnails and custom save names that you can assign yourself. But that'd be another video. User index here, this is just the user that is saving the game. So this is a little bit more intended for like multiplayer. Some people I've also seen have used it to like user index of like 99 or something really high up there to choose where they're saving settings information and stuff like that. That way user index 0 can be left to search for save games for the actual player's game and not their settings, if that makes sense. But once we load that, we do need to cast it to our RPG save, and that's just to make sure that it is an RPG save. Then we're going to get it. Then we're getting our game instance, casting to our RPG game instance, and we're updating our game instance's player stats and player location to match from our RPG save here. And then once again, we're going to set our player's controller to hide our mouse cursor, and we're going to set our input mode back to game only. And then we are loading the level from our save game. And that is just basic explanation of our main menu setup here. Okay, and that is it for our main menu. We can back out of that. And let's go and let's do our pause menu now. So pause menu is going to be pretty similar. We're going to throw in a canvas panel here and a vertical box. Set it up the exact same way. Size content, zero that out, throw it in the center. Alignment of 0.5 and 0.5. And we're going to throw in same basic combo, a button with text in the button. In this case, we're going to do padding of 10. Name this first button resume. Make our text match. Leave our text the same size. Duplicate that 3 times this time. This next button is going to be called save. And once again, make our text match. Next button is going to be load. Have our text match. And last button is going to be quit. All right, going to our graph here. We want to add a variable real quick. That's going to be our player. Make that type BP player object reference. We're going to make this instance editable and expose on spawn. All right, let's start out with the resume game here. On clicked, all we're going to do is set visibility to collapsed. We're going to do get player controller. Set show mouse cursor to false. And set input mode game only. There we go. That is our resume. Do the other easy one, our quit game. You could have it quit to the main menu. In this case, all I'm going to do is just have it quit. All Alright, and let's do our other easy one, our load game. The reason that one's easy is because we can just go back into our main menu and we can just copy and paste all this. It is going to be literally the exact same code. Just like that. Boom. That's our load. Alright, and save. Save is going to be a little bit different here. I'm going to drag off here. We're going to do create save game object. And we're going to make it of type RPG save. In here, we want to set player stats to be player get player stats. Not player state, get player stats. Just like that. Then we want to set current level. Right over there, because we're going to do get current level name. Drag that into there. Do get player location. Oh, my bad. Set player location. Drag off our player here. Get actor transform. Assign it right there. Then we need to drag off that and do save game to slot. The slot name is going to be RPG. Drag off our save game object to there. And that is that. So all we're doing here is we need to create our actual save game object. And then once we create that object, we're going to assign all the variables that we need to save. So our player stats, our current level, and our actor's transform. Then we actually need to save that to a slot. In this case, we're just using the slot RPG, but this can be whatever you want it. You just gotta make sure it's consistent. At some point, I would like to go over doing thumbnails and actually be able to name slots and have as many slots as you want, but that's for another time. Okay, so we're almost done here. We're about to go into our player, but first we need to set up how we're actually going to level up. In this case, I'm just going to use a pickup to give ourselves some EXP just for demonstrating this, but this could be an enemy, it could be anything you want. And the way we're going to make this universal to where it can be anything you want is by using an interface. You're going to go under blueprint and then blueprint interface. We'll call it BPI EXP. We'll call this function EXP Gain with an input that is a float, and we'll call it EXP Gain. That is all we need to do for this. Not going to go over an explanation of this interface because I've already done that over both blueprints and C++. I will link that here. All right, we have our interface. Now we're going to go ahead and make our pickup. We'll make it of type actor, BP pickup. Oh, we'll call it BP pickup EXP. To add a static mesh, just call it pickup mesh. Let's make it this box here. Let's size it to about 0.6. Set our collision to overlap all dynamic. And do on component begin overlap. Going to check does object implement our EXP interface? And if it does, we're going to call EXP Gain. Another variable here that's going to be called EXP to give. Get a float. I'll make that instance editable so we can customize it. EXP to give, let's make it 20. Pop that in there. All right, and that is all we did here. So all we did was just give it a mesh, set its collision to overlap to make sure that it will overlap with our player. And whenever it does overlap, it's going to check does our player or does any actor overlaps with use the EXP interface. If it does, it's going to call that EXP Gain. We also want to destroy our actor. We want to keep picking up our pickup after all. All right, and let's actually go ahead and let's just throw a couple of these pickups in our world here. That's probably plenty right there. All right, now we're good to go into our player here. First thing we're going to do is drag off our begin play here from our mapping context. We're going to create a widget of our pause menu. Going to assign ourself as the player here. Promote this to a variable, we'll just call it pause. With an extra U, why not? Add to viewport. And we also want to go ahead and set the visibility of it to collapsed. Alright, that is our pause. Let's go ahead and set up our input action for that so we actually can pause the game. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to get our pause and set visibility to visible whenever we start. Also need to do get player controller, set show mouse cursor to true, and we want to do set input mode UI only. We can drag in our pause as the widget to focus. We're going to go class settings here. We're going to implement our EXP interface here. And then we're going to make a quick function here to actually handle how we are going to level up. From here, we're going to drag off our player stats. We're going to drag off there. We're going to do set members in player stats. I'm going to check all of these pens. We're going to do split on all of them as well. From here, we're going to drag off and we're going to break player stats. Once again, we're going to split off all of these pins so we can see everything. Drag that in there, and this is where we assign the logic for leveling up. I'm going to keep it fairly simple. For attributes, we're just going to increase them by 1. But let's make our skills just a little bit more complex here. For skills, we're going to use a math expression node. Do x plus, actually let's do x plus 5 times 1.1. Oh, not an 8. It's supposed to be a star. There we go. Drag our skill in there. That's going to be, our sword is going to be based off our strength attribute. It's going to assign our sword skill. Range is going to be based off of dexterity. And we'll make our armor based off of endurance. Alright. Next for our health here, we're just going to drag our default health into there. If you want to heal up, that's where you would add it. Our max health here, we want to increase using math expression as well. We're going to do x, do 100 plus x times 1.05. That's going to be based off of our endurance. It's going to be our max health. Duplicate that, make that 50 to match our max MP default. Make that based off of our intelligence. It's going to drag MP into there. Drag EXP into EXP. Then EXP to level. We're going to do another math expression. This one's going to be x plus 30 times 1.15. That's going to be based off our player level. Is going to be our EXP to level. And our level itself, we're just going to increase by 1. Okay, this is a little bit messy here. A quick explanation of all this. So anytime we level up, we're going to increase all of our attributes by 1. Then we're using this node, a math expression node. this just lets you put in an equation with however many inputs you want that you use X, Y, Z, any you want. And all this is basically a collapsed graph. They'll automatically assign each node to do the functionality you want in the order you want to match with parentheses. So in this case, order is changed to match. That makes sense. And of course, we want to set our level up by 1 because we leveled up once. Okay. Now, our actual EXP gain. For this, we're going to need to get our player stats. We're going to break player stats here. Then we're going to break our EXP. Then drag off into set members in EXP. And we're going to be setting our EXP itself. Add the EXP gain. There we go. Then we need to do a branch node to check here if our EXP here is greater than or equal to our EXP to level. If it is, then we need to, once again, drag off of here and do a set members. Oh, I'll do it this way. Break you again. Set members and EXP. We're going to be setting our EXP to equal our EXP minus our EXP to level. Then we're going to call the level up function. That is our EXP gain. So quick explanation of this. Whenever we gain XP using our interface here, which how this is called can be done with anything, can be done with whenever an enemy is killed, it could call it on whatever actor killed that enemy. So if you have a party and each party member levels up independently, then anytime you, so let's say this player does damage, right? We call the apply damage. The enemy we're attacking, we can put damage causer. We can put ourselves as the damage causer here. So then the enemy's side, it's going to be using the any damage event. If I can actually get the right event to come up. This one. And that damage causer, from there we can do the does object implement interface to check if our player can level up. If whoever killed the enemy can level up. That's why the interface here is so flexible and so useful. Then, of course, all we're doing here is we're just adding the XP to our EXP. We're going to check if it's enough to level up, and then we're going to subtract to make sure that our player levels up. All right, next we need to actually make a main menu really quick here. We also need to go into our game mode here. We need to set our default pawn to be our player. And in this map here, we're going to set our game mode to be our RPG game mode. All right, we're going to go and create a new empty level we'll call main menu. And we're going to make a new game mode as well. We'll just call it menu game mode. All we're going to do here is we're going to get player controller, set show mouse cursor to true, create widget of our main menu, add it to the viewport. And set input mode UI only, focused on our main menu. Gonna go into our main menu here, save everything, and then override the game mode to be our main menu game mode. All it's gonna do is make sure that our main menu pops up when we restart the game. So let's go ahead and give it a test. We hit play here. If we hit load game, nothing's going to happen because we don't have a save game. We hit new game here. We spawn in. Hit Shift F1. Bring it up. Check our player here. As you can see, we're leveling up. And we made it to level 5. So now if we hit P to bring up our pause and we save the game here, we can load the game. We go back to our location, and if we check, we kept our save thing. We kept our EXP, all of our stats. And pick these up again, level up a little bit more. Make it to 9. Let's jump up here. And save the game up here. And this time let's quit. Then let's load it from the main menu. And we start right over here. And we are still level 9. So that's how that works. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to use, and this whole system is pretty versatile. Using the interfaces for your EXP gains, using structures to save the player data you have for your RPG, you can kind of expand this however you want to. And I recommend using the interface really for just about any kind of EXP system. I think it's probably the best way to handle it, unless you're doing like a Souls game, in which case, in Souls games, it doesn't really matter who kills the enemy or if the enemy kills themselves, the player still gets the souls from it. Using that system, you may want to have a master class that just kind of tracks enemies' deaths and gives EXP or souls accordingly. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Let me know. I will try to help out and answer those questions as best I can. Or if you have a suggestion on what you would like to see next, please let me know. Right now, my plan is going to be a Blender tutorial making a game-ready model. We're going to be creating the model. We're going to be UV unwrapping it. We're going to be doing some basic animation work on it as well. And we're going to be texturing it and baking our texture maps all entirely within Blender. And then we're going to import that over into Unreal Engine. After that, I'm going to be trying to make a aim down sights tutorial, as well as a little bit of animation information in there as well. But if there's any other projects or any other tutorials you'd like to see, please let me know down below. And subscribe if you enjoyed this. Thank you for your time.